Huda. As Huda said, I'm a training consultant and a writer, and I'm based in Dubai, and I work all around the Gulf and in Asia. I've spent the last 25 years working all over the world with public and private organizations, and I found that many of the challenges organizations have are caused by poor communication and weak interpersonal skills. And it's these, and not their products or services, that make them non-competitive. So during the talk, we're going to brainstorm some ideas and techniques to improve these in your organization. You're going to get lots of great ideas and techniques during the next 45 minutes, as this talk combines material from all of my most popular training courses. Your light bulbs are definitely going to be switched on, and I don't want you to miss anything. So if you can make sure you've got some pencil and paper to hand to make notes and take down any questions you might have. We'll have, 2 or 3 question sessions as we go along, and then some time at the end to discuss things. And as Huda said, you can view the PowerPoint on our web portal. So what I want to do today is I want to take you on a journey. I know you've probably all been working, or some of you still are working. I just want you to sit back and relax, and let me take you on a journey into your organization. We're going to begin at recruitment, and we're going to end the journey looking at simplicity and emotional intelligence. And during the journey, we'll look at all the areas in your organizations where you can improve your communication and interpersonal skills to make you more competitive in the global marketplace. We're going to have a look at the recent research on communication and competitiveness. We'll discuss the areas that you might like to make changes in, and one of those being induction and orientation. Then let's move on to your frontline staff. Do you consider the importance of these frontline staff, and do you test them for their English language ability and also their EQ? Next, we can have a look at general communication in your organization. We'll have a quick discussion about email technique and how to use the phone, and a little bit on face-to-face communication. How good is that in your organization? Is that aiding your competitiveness, or is it actually diminishing your competitiveness? And finally, I want to look at simplicity of the communication in your organization and the emotional intelligence skills that people have. So that's where we're going, and if you've got any questions as we go along, just write them, because I can see them in the box by my side. So here we go then. I want to begin with some recent research. You'll be very interested to see this, and it's been completed by a company called Towers Watson. And they reported that companies that are highly effective communicators have a 47% higher total return to shareholders over 5-year periods compared to those who weren't effective. They also found that managers who are highly effective communicators have teams who are at least 3 times more effective than teams who have managers who are weak communicators. So if you can work on these areas that we're going to discuss, you will find that your competitiveness is going to be increased, because your revenue will increase, your market share will increase, the profitability of your company is then much better, and creativity and innovation will be part of the norm for you. So we need to have a look over the next few minutes, at some other research which is quite important, because now 70% of people in international organizations speak English as an additional or, a second language, as they call it. 70%. And 93% of those people who speak English as an additional language do not feel confident expressing themselves in the workplace. There are many reasons for this lack of confidence. Some of them are, they might not have begun to study the language till their early teens. They may have been taught by non-native speakers who had weak pronunciation or outdated ideas, and they may also have had no need or motivation to learn the language. So now that we know, a little bit about these basic challenges that organizations have, how can we address them effectively? Well, I think one of the first things that you might like to do is to test and measure the level of English skills new recruits have, during the interview process. If you do this, then you're going to see immediate change. There are many organizations that can help you to do this measurement and do this testing. The English Language Institutes like the British Council can help you. Cambridge English Language Centre or Tests can come along and help you, or they can do these online. And Trinity College Dublin. These are just a few of the organizations that can help you as you go along. However, the most important thing here is you need to make sure that those tests are more than just, a checklist on an application form, ticking boxes, because these tests can actually form the baseline of the language skills capability of your companies. And they, should test abilities in spoken English and clarity particularly, writing skills and reading skills. And this will help you to create a benchmark in the organization which will ensure a consistency of skills, which in turn will aid cooperation in the organization and improve relationships both internally and externally. I think it's also a good idea to do this testing at board level. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching with COOs and CEOs who are brilliant, in their role, but their speaking and writing of English is a challenge for them. They don't have the basic skills. So you'll be doing them a great service as well. Now, this is for people coming in during a recruitment interview, but what would you do with people who are already in the organization? Well, I think, it's a good idea to go and do some testing with them. You can test their level, you get feedback from appraisals, you get feedback from colleagues and customers. And the important thing to remember here is you can put a simple plan in place, but you need to remember that you're working with adult learners and they have very specific needs. So whoever you get to do their coaching training, they need to be able to adapt the training to the needs of the learner and to the workplace that the learner is actually in. I'm working at the moment with an executive chef whose native language is Thai. And when we first started working together a few weeks ago, he couldn't say much to me at all in English. Now, after 8 tailored sessions, we can have in-depth conversations on things like who's going to win the American election. So, it's that tailoring and it's that getting the exercises and getting the word usage for the particular student you have, rather than just taking a course off a shelf, that's going to make a big difference. So, testing people. when they come into the organization during recruitment, and going back into the organization and finding out those people who don't have the skills and helping them to get them. I think the next thing that you might want to do is to have a look at your induction or orientation training. Does it actually make it clear to people what their role is? Do they know what they're doing? And do they know how their role impacts your bottom line? Do they know who they have to work with to achieve their goals? And do they know your competitive advantages and how to make the best of them? That can all actually come out in a good orientation or induction program, but you need to make sure, that you get somebody presenting this who has, passion for the business that they're in and a passion for handing over knowledge and has a sense of fun. And if you get somebody to do that, you're really setting people up at the very beginning of their career with you. Don't become a statistic. The IABC, the International Association of Business Communicators, found that 48% of companies fail to explain the purpose of a job. So people are not quite sure, why they're doing what they're doing. And 63% of people don't know the common goal of the organization. Everybody's working very hard, but they're all working towards different goals, and what happens is that nothing much is achieved. So we've got our testing, we've got a really good induction or orientation program. The next area maybe is to look at the first point of contact. Is there a security guard inside or out directing your customers and clients? How do they interact with the clients and customers? Because how they interact can actually lay the foundation for whatever business they've come to do. But often it's seen as unimportant. That level of staff do not make any impact on the organization, but really they do. If you think about it, if you have a security guard who's giving directions, how good is their English? Can you imagine how frustrating it is if you've driven for over an hour, you're a little bit late, and then the person who's there to direct you is not able to understand what you're asking? Or even worse, he doesn't recognize the name of the person that you want to see. The other thing that we need to be careful of here is, is the person front line of contact, are they actually aware of emotional intelligence? They might be feeling a little bit off that day or feeling a little bit tired, and they don't realize that their behavior is affected with this. They come over as disinterested or rude. What image is that giving out? Does it help you become competitive? But you see, if you test their English language and EQ ability during recruitment, you can make sure that they have the skills which will enhance your image, and make you your client. It can make your clients and your customers' day. I'll give you a good example of this. When I worked in the UK, I used to commute to London every day. And I would arrive at the train station at 7 o'clock for the 7:10 train. And in the winter, it was very dark and really miserable at that time of day. And there was an older gentleman who operated the parking lot for the station. And he would give me always a very cheerful good morning, tell me how beautiful I was looking that day, and always make eye contact with me when he was giving the change. I just floated on the train, my spirits high for the rest of the day. Then one morning, he had gone. and there was a young man taking the money. He had his headset on and he was totally in his own world. No eye contact, no greeting, and the change bounced back at me. Who do you think had the most impact on my day? And all it took, you know, was a bit of interest, some very positive body language, and somebody who had a passion for what they did. You know, people are going to forget what you say, they're going to forget what you did, but people will never ever forget how you made them feel. So your front point of contact, absolutely key. If you have a receptionist, is he or she able to speak English well with the clarity that everybody is going to understand? Do they know who's who in the organization? Are they given a list of staff members and their roles and responsibilities? And are they given some training before they begin? Do they have the opportunity to sit in different departments and see what they do in those departments and get to know different personalities? You know, a couple of weeks ago, a friend was trying to make an appointment on the telephone, and the telephone was answered quickly by the receptionist, but he couldn't understand a word the receptionist was saying. So he finished the call and hung up, and then contacted one of their competitors who were offering the same service. The receptionist there was clear and concise, the appointment was made, and the deal was done. Pronunciation and clarity of speech can be really difficult for those who speak English as an additional language, even for those who speak English as a first language. But you can help them through by coaching and training and tailoring the need to the specific learners. So now that you have some testing in place and a great induction, and you're coaching your frontline staff, you really are on your way to being more competitive. But you need to remember that this needs to be constantly monitored and measured, as it's very easy for people to get, you know, complacent. So some of you might have started making plans to change some things in your organizations, or you might have some questions. Have we got any questions or comments here you would like to share? Or maybe you would like to assess your organization on, you know, do you test for English language ability when people come in? Are you aware of the importance of training your frontline staff? Any comments there? You can type them into the box now if you have. Any questions, any comments? Or maybe you would like to rate yourself. How do you rate yourself on those areas? You know, 10 being brilliant, you're doing it all. Maybe 5 is kind of not bad, but there's room for improvement. Would you rate yourself as a number 1? Big rethink. No comments. Okay, no questions, no comments. All right then. Yeah, oh yes, there is an audio delay, please fix it. Let's have a look. 8. I don't know what 8 means. Can you explain? Sajad, you have said something about 8. If you could tell us a little bit more, that would be wonderful. Oh, you would rate yourself at 8. Oh, sorry. Yeah, wonderful. That's great. Okay, brilliant. You're doing it all right. Okay, excellent. Thanks for that. So let's carry on then. Let's continue on your journey through your organization. We go on now to look at, you know, your general communication skills. And there's a little bit of not moving. Let me see. Yeah, we've got your, how great you are, you're brilliant. We've got 1-8, which is absolutely magnificent. So yeah, you're doing it all right. But let's go on now to just have a look at the 3 channels of communication that are used in organizations. Face-to-face, for meetings, one-to-one or group, and then you've got the telephone, which is not used as much as it used to be. I'll give you some research on that. And then you've got the email, which is actually the most popular way of communicating. Internal emails are effective communication for sharing basic information. They're great for sending simple messages to an entire workforce with just one click of a button. They're very easy, very convenient, and also you've got proof of sending or receiving. The challenge is, though, especially with writers who have English as an additional or a second language, is that they often don't have a very large vocabulary, and that can cause problems. Many of the people I coach were taught to use lots of long words and bulk out their documents. The bigger, the better. It looks more impressive. But in fact, nothing could be further from the truth. No one sits at their desk reading through emails anymore. They skim and scan them when they have a spare minute, and usually that spare minute is on the way to something else. So, any messages you have to be simple and have to be very immediate. And when, a reader has limited vocabulary, then it makes it more difficult for them. So you've got to actually, think about the customer aspect of all this and making your readers comfortable. When the writers have limited vocabulary, they often too get the tone right in a document. I don't know what that poor girl received, but sometimes we offend without knowing it, and that could be the cause of limited vocabulary. So you've got to be very careful. You really have to train people in writing skills. A clear subject is key for an email. A clear subject matter, absolutely key, because that's what's going to grab the attention. These people who are skimming and scanning and scanning and on their way to meetings. Also, a greeting such as good morning, good afternoon, hi is important. Sometimes get emails through and there's no hi, there's no and, there's no nothing, straight into the message. The other thing that I advise clients to use is an icebreaker. It's like the handshake or the smile in the meeting. You don't just go straight into the meeting. There's a little bit of fun beforehand. And an icebreaker can do that. Research from America actually showed that poorly written emails can cost a company between $2,100 a year and $4,100 a year per employee. Now, if you've got a team of 10, that's $40,000 a year. So, what can you do about it? Well, if you can arrange to have everybody who needs to write in their role trained within the first couple of months of joining your organization, you'll create a consistency of writing skills, and you'll also cut down misunderstanding. I've had over 30 years experience teaching business writing, and I've produced a wonderful little book called Business Writing in 5 Easy Steps. And, I'll show you the main content of this because that's something maybe you would be interested in teaching your employees. The first step really is you need to clarify your aim before you start to write. And then you need to keep your language simple. Next comes structure. Does your structure flow? Is it logical? What about your layout? You might be great at the other 3, but you use maybe size 10 font. There's no spacing. Everything is, the whole page is filled. There's very little white space. If you don't lay it out, if you don't package you're writing imaginatively, then the key messages will get lost. And finally, you need to have a look at proofreading. If you're proofreading a big document, you need to schedule it in the beginning of your preparation. If you're just proofreading an email, then the advice is to read it back to front, and you have more chance of picking up the grammar and the spelling mistakes. If we look at AIM, what do you want to look at in AIM? Before you begin, this is all your preparation. Well, you need to have a think about why you're actually writing the document. Often people will say, well, it's the end of month report, or writing an update on the project. It's really not good enough. You have to ask yourself, I'm writing it in order to, so that, in order to inform the project team that we're running out of budget, so that additional can be found. You need to know who your reader is. How interested is your reader going to be in what you're writing? What is the level of the person? Your top team need to know everything about everything, but they just need an overview. They don't need in-depth. Whereas maybe one of your employees needs to be instructed. Same subject, but different style. Then you need to ask yourself, what do they know about this subject already? What do they need to know, and what do I want them to do, after I've written this document? This is from, you might recognize it, the 6 WHs, from the poem by Rudyard Kipling. I kept 6 honest serving men. They taught me all I knew. Their names were why and what and when and how and where and who. Absolutely invaluable in your writing and all of your other business dealings. So you've got the first 3. When is the writing due? Do you have a deadline? Do you meet that deadline? Very important, because when do you start to prepare your document? And another thing to consider is, when are you at your best? Are you a lark or a nightingale? We all have different body clocks, and try to arrange it that you do your high value work when you feel at your best. Not always possible, I know it, but it's really good if you can. And then, where is it going to? The different cultures that you might be sending your emails, your reports to, what are their expectations? If you're going to write to Sheikh Mohammed in this country, in Dubai, it wouldn't be, Dear Sheikh Mohammed, there's a specific greeting, like Your Excellency or Your Royal Highness. I'm not sure which it is, but you would need to find out. And same too with the sign-off. Where is it going, and what do you need? And this is all your planning before you begin. And then, how are you going to structure your document? Are you telling, or are you selling in the information you're giving? And research tells us that we shouldn't have any more than 8 main points. That's the maximum for people. They can, understand 8. After that, they switch off. So be careful not to overload them. And maybe you like this format of mind map that I use to make it simple, to get your ideas together, and to make sure that they have a logical flow as you go along. So the 5 steps will look at your aim, think about your language, and these would be the areas that I would look at, and these are the areas that are important when people are writing. You see how simple it is, and I find that even after the first day of training, people's bulbs are switched on, and it's very easy for them to see where they have to change. With structure, we have a look at using mind maps. We think about, are we telling or selling? Absolutely key, especially in any report you're doing, is your research sources. Are they sufficient? Are they up to date? Are they easy to access? If you're writing an email, there's a wonderful little template called Scrap that I teach people so that they can write their emails fast and logically. And then we look at their informative reports and their persuasive, which are both quite different. You know, if you're trying to influence and persuade somebody, it's a totally different technique than if you're trying to inform them. So you've got your aim, you've got your language, you've got your structure. How about your layout? You know, how are you packaging? Do you have a company standard for this? You know, do you give some guidance on the spacing? Because some people haven't got a clue, they've never learned that. You know, if you haven't learned officially typing, how would you know how many spaces to leave between paragraphs? You wouldn't. So we need to look at spacing. We'll think about the font. You've got a standard font, you know, to create a consistency. Very important is the size of the font. If you send something out that's a wonderfully written document, but it's only in a size 10 font, then you know, people might not be able to read it very easily. They might just put it down and dismiss it. And that's not going to make you competitive in the global market. So justification is another thing we look at. Amazing the number of people who still think that they indent when they're writing. That idea went out many years ago because English is a living language and it's always changing. So we need to keep our skills updated. How about your graphic packages and your figures? You know, do you have specific graphic packages? Because one picture can paint 1,000 words. And if you're having to give an update report with figures, you know, do you do it imaginatively? So that's all part of the layout. And maybe organizations haven't really thought about these things. And finally, do you proofread? If it's a big document, then you need to make sure that you schedule in the timing for that. You need to find a quiet place, which is actually quite difficult sometimes in open plan areas. And you always read it for one error at a time. You know, if we don't do that, that's when we miss things. So you will break it down. You might look at spelling, you might look at grammar, you might look at layout and all of that. You know, have I put my headers and footers in? All of that one at a time rather than looking at all together. Spelling's a big difficulty in the English language. If you've got a photographic memory, it's brilliant, but otherwise it really can be a little bit of difficult language to spell. The thing is, if you know what your weak words are, you know, you can keep them by your side and have the right spelling at all times. But there's lots of techniques that I can train to make people spell better than they are at the moment. And then we need to have a look at the clarity of the document. Does it flow? Does it make sense? And finally, you know, is it all aligned? So by breaking it down, the proofreading down to different sections, you've got much more of a chance of picking out things, you know, that could do with being changed. So that is your writing. And the next most popular, you know, way of communicating in your organizations really will be the telephone. You know, telephones make business communication fast, personal, which is very important, and interactive if they are answered. Communication by telephone is now about 5% of all business communication, according to the telecoms company Centering Services. If the person you're calling, you know, is available, then you can take care of business on the spot. If not, voicemail gives you the option of leaving a message. So the telephone actually adds an extra dimension to your communication, and it can be especially useful for those, you know, who don't feel their writing skills are effective enough. But the challenge is that sometimes people don't pick up. Yeah? Well, I know it could be that they're working on high-value tasks when I call, or it could be that they're in a meeting, but they could let me know this by switching on their voicemail. and leaving me a message that tells me when they're going to be free. And then I wouldn't have to send, an email or a text message, which might not get answered for 48 hours. And really, I need that decision now. So please pick up. In his book, you might have read it, The 8 Habits of Highly Effective People. The 8th habit, actually, the first book he wrote was The 7 Habits, but the 8th habit by Stephen Covey, he talks about the race against the competition not being won now by the biggest organizations, but by the fastest. Are you fast? Do you encourage the use of voicemail in your organizations? Do you say, when you'll be free on the message that you leave to say you're out of the office? And do you get back to the caller? Really important. All of this, plus, a telephone etiquette, something like this gives a guideline for everyone to know, how to use the phone effectively. Now, we could go on to look at the face-to-face communication. And, if you're presenting, there's a wonderful course that I run called the 8 Steps to Powerful Presenting. And the first step really, again, like writing, is to clarify your aim, then control your nerves, because no matter how great your presentation is, if there's any nervousness, then it's not going to be effective. You might go blank, your voice might change, you might stumble and stammer. You don't want to do that. The most important thing for presentations, one-on-one, or group, even if you're going to chair a meeting, is preparation. And they say that, if you're going to do a 20-minute talk, you really need 20 hours preparation. The next area we would look at is your body language. Now, there's a lot of controversy going on about this at the moment, but the research years ago told us that 55% of your message comes through your body language, and really a lot of it certainly still does, but the jury's out on that, and you can see all the research online. There's a lot of tweeting about it. Voice, especially in, organizations where English is the additional language and people, are speaking English from all over the world. So you might get some Sri Lankans in the company, you've got some Indians, some Pakistanis, some French. You need to be clear in your English language, and that can be a big problem. But again, clarity can be improved by something simple like looking at tongue twisters. We make the voices produced with the lips and the tongue, a little bit of the teeth and a little bit of the roof of the mouth. So if you can actually exercise these, you're going to improve your clarity immediately. So the voice actually is 38% of your message. So it's very important that people understand that when they are speaking either one-to-one or in a group. And then the words, 7% of your message. Still very important, words and structure, but maybe the body language, the voice kind of, has more impact for you. So the other area that, you should look at really, especially if you're presenting, is, just less is more. Visuals are actually there as an aid. They're not there as your talk. You're the best aid there is. You have an energy and a vibrancy, whereas, words on a screen can't. So just use them as an aid, but use the best possible. And then how do you become memorable? Well, you tell stories to people. You give them practical examples. That's the best way of actually getting your presentation remembered. So those are some of the areas you might think about when you're looking at face-to-face communication. If you're going to be delivering a team briefing, a project update, giving a short coaching session, these skills will serve you very well. And if you have to give a formal or even an informal talk, it's a good idea to join Toastmasters. Toastmasters are around the world, and if you Google them, you'll find one near you, and you can go and practice your spoken communication, and you get really very good and very professional feedback. I think it's also great to watch some of the best TED Talks. As well as getting a lot of knowledge, you're actually also going to get wonderful techniques, because you're not allowed to speak for more than 19 minutes on a TED Talk. Why is that? Because the concentration span of the individual is 20 max. So those are some ideas that might help you in your face-to-face communication. The thing about email and telephone conversations is that they sometimes require you to follow up or chase. And this really is a big waste of time and money. And it's not going to help you to be competitive. You know that most of the organizations I work with spend 2 hours a day chasing people on the telephone or through email. Can you believe that? 2 hours out of a contracted 8 hours a day are actually wasted. And it gets worse. If you have a team of 10 people, that's 20 hours a day wasted on chasing people to do things they agreed to do but don't do. Why do they do it? Why don't they do it when they should? Well, there are lots of reasons for that, and that actually is the topic maybe of another webinar. But if you have a look at my website, on my blog, you'll see a short article on chasing, and you might get some ideas on how to minimize the chasing in your organizations. Well, maybe you don't have much. I hope you don't anyway. Yeah. Okay, so let's bring it all together by looking, at simplicity in your organizations. How simple are things? How simple are your processes and procedures? How simple is the writing? Now, I want to quote a great man here, Steve Jobs. He said, simple can be harder than complex. You've got to think it through, You have to work hard to get your thinking clean and to make it simple. But it's worth it in the end, because once you're there, you can move mountains. Just want you to think for a minute, what's the most quoted line from Shakespeare? Did you get it? To be or not to be. 6 words, mainly 2 letters each word. That's memorable. Why is it so memorable? Because it's short, it's easy, it's simple. Are your emails or your business correspondence the same? Because if they are, then you're going to be competitive in the marketplace. And another thing that I like people to look at for simplicity is you might have heard of the Dabawallas of Mumbai. Dabawallas actually deliver lunches every day to 2,000 people. They take the lunch from the home of the person preparing it. They cycle with the lunch to the station with maybe 10 or 12 on their bicycles. They put the lunch on the train, and then somebody at the station that it arrives at puts it on their bike and takes it to the office, so that the person getting the lunch has a fresh, home-cooked lunch every day. Now, they deliver 200,000 lunches every day, and they have one very simple goal: to deliver on time. And the grey box on the right shows you these are the markings that they use to help them know where to collect, which station to go to, where to deliver, and who should pick it up at the end of the day. Believe it or not, their only one lunch is mismanaged every 2 months. They only lose one lunch every 2 months. That's 6 lunches a year, with 200,000 lunches a day. Quite amazing. And the people that actually deliver these, are often, they can't read and they can't write. And that's why we have the simplicity of the coding on what to do. But they get it right every time. And they're actually, you know, Harvard Business Review has done a study of them. Richard Branson goes and looks at how they do it, and how we can simplify things in our organization to be that effective. So you can actually, there's lots of wonderful stuff, you know, on YouTube about them. So how does this degree of simplicity compare, you know, with your procedures and processes, and the documentation in your organization? You know, does it sometimes take you 2 or 3 hours to go through it and to understand it? If so, let's try to change all of that. Finally, I want to finish today by thinking a little bit about emotional intelligence, because it goes in hand with good communication. And I was reading a great book recently by Jeff Colvin, and Jeff was making the case that, you know, really humans are underrated. You know, the machine is never going to take over. Robots are never going to take over from the human communicator. And, you know, you can see what he means here. You know, those children are actually horrified by the looks of the robot. It's quite interesting, though. If you look at the face is very blank, and they just don't like it. But here's Angela Merkel and David Cameron meeting maybe a more developed robot. Now look at his face, or her face. I don't know what it is with a robot. You see it's slight smile, and they smile back. But really, it's just a bit of fun, but we must develop our most essential human abilities and not just value technology. But we also need to look at the richness of the interpersonal experience. This is a very nice list looking at EQ, a very simple list, low and high EQ. And it's really good. So if you're, you know, got any areas on the left side that you need to develop into the right side, then have a look at that when you go on the website. And finally, all you have to do now is, the way to get started on this is to quit talking about it and begin doing, from the wonderful Walt Disney. It's been a real pleasure to be able to talk to you today. I hope you found that useful, and that we meet again sometime soon. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful rest of the day or evening. Bye-bye.